In this video, I'd like to talk about how powerful isometric training really can be and how I think everyone should use it in their resistance training program. Hello everybody, hey, this is 𝘾𝙊𝘼𝘾𝙃𝙄𝙉𝙂 coming to you from 𝘾𝙊𝘼 Fitness. I've been a fitness trainer and gym owner for over 25 years. And in this video, I want to talk about isometric training. You know, isometric training really is a great tool to use with your resistance training. I think it's pretty underrated, and there really is a lot of science behind it. So in this video, first we're going to define isometric training. I'm going to say how I think you should use it, and then we'll go into like the real science behind why I think it works so well. Well, isometric training just means that when a muscle is under tension, but it's not lengthening or shortening at the time. It's kind of like a static contraction. Like for example, if you're flexing your bicep, now I'm pulling my left arm against my right, but my elbow's not moving. It's like a fixed joint angle. That's an isometric contraction. So there is definitely a training effect going on there. There is muscle tension. If you do it long and hard enough, there'll be some metabolic stress. You know, there is some muscle damage. You know, all the classic definitions of what resistance training is. And actually, this is going to show my age. I remember years ago in the 70s, you know, I was a kid, I'd be looking in the back of a magazine in the classified section, and you see this big muscular guy, Charles Atlas, and he'd be pushing his hands together, and he'd be trying to sell these, you know, workout programs, you know, via email. I mean, not via email, via just like mail order, like old-fashioned mail order. And he'd call it like dynamic tension, and he'd be pushing his hands together really hard. He'd be contracting his pecs, and he'd be developing his pectorals. And you know, if you send away for this program, he'd send you a whole program on pretty much isometric training. But there really is some great science that really supports isometric training. Let me explain it to you. Like for example, when a muscle is being lengthened, it wants to snap back. That's just pretty much like how the body works. For example, there are like muscle receptors in the belly of the muscle. They're called muscle spindles. So muscle spindles sit in the belly of the muscle, and they're constantly sending communication to the brain, whether to contract, whether to relax, whether to move. You know, it's pretty much is one of the receptors that communicate with the brain. So for example, when they're under length, like when the muscles are being lengthened, they communicate really well with your brain, with your central nervous system. So for example, if like say you're coiling up like to hit a baseball, and you're creating all this elastic energy, and the muscles are being, you know, being loaded, and they're being stretched back, and you're contracting, and your body is like proprioceptively, your body is really ready to hit that ball. Those muscle spindles are communicating really, really well with the brain to contract and to snap back. But unfortunately, as the muscle contracts, and once the muscle is almost fully contracted, those muscle spindles, kind of those intrafusal fibers inside the muscle spindles, kind of pretty much go under slack, and they don't communicate too well with your brain, with your central nervous system, to keep contracting, because you're very close to your pretty much end range. And this is a concept I learned from muscle activation technique. Besides being a fitness trainer and gym owner, I'm also an MAT and muscle activation technique specialist. And this is one of the concepts why MAT does work. I learned this from Greg Roscoff over at MAT, that once the muscle is fully contracted, that it doesn't communicate too well or as well with the brain to create an even better contraction. And this is where isometric training can really, really help your training. It also can help your whole body just perform better and more optimally. Okay, so let me give you an example. I know this may sound a little bit confusing, but once we go through some examples, it'll be really simple. Let's go back to the bicep, really easy to understand. Okay, so let's say I'm flexing my bicep all the way, and I'm holding this, and this is an isometric contraction of my bicep. I'm going to try to flex my bicep as much as possible. I'm also going to supinate. Supinate just means when your palm is facing your bicep, I want to fully contract my bicep, and I'm going to hold this for 5 seconds. When you pause for 5 seconds and do an isometric contraction, you're giving your brain, your central nervous system, more time to recognize this position. And sometimes these positions are positions of weakness when the muscle is fully contracted. I also did a great video on reciprocal inhibition, which kind of touched on this a little bit too. For example, the more the bicep contracts, the more the tricep, the antagonist, will relax. That all plays into this isometric contraction. Isometric contraction is so great for developing muscle. It's great for developing joint stability, in my opinion. If you're at the end range of any motion, you should have strength and neurological control in that motion. But if you're just concentrating, like contracting in and out of it, sometimes it doesn't give the brain time to recognize that position of weakness. So for example, like say you have some issues with your elbow and you're flexing your arm as much, but you'll see that you just can't flex it anymore. And it's not like there's a bony barrier or something that's limiting the flexion in your elbow. It's really, let's assume it's muscular weakness. Like the bicep just can't contract anymore because it's just, the tricep is tightening up because it's sensing some instability or some weakness in this position. So the tricep tightens up, doesn't let you go any further. But by doing an isometric contraction, say holding this for say 10 seconds, you might get a little more range. Then you hold it again for another 10 seconds, you might get a little more range. That's one great way to use isometrics for obviously to make the muscles stronger, but also to strengthen these end ranges when the muscle is fully contracted. Let's give another example now. Let's talk about the pectorals. Okay, so we got our big pec, our chest muscle, attaches to the sternum, right, down to the lower ribs, up to the clavicle, and attaches to the arm. Now the pec, the pec internally rotates the arm, the humerus. It also does, horizontal adduction outwards. Everyone knows that. It brings the arm across the body. Okay, if you're doing much of your dumbbell work and you're doing your bench press work, you're taking the chest through a pretty good range of motion, but you may not really be hitting that end range when the muscle is fully contracted. And if you do that, it's really going to create a ton of strength and stability in the shoulder. So how you would do that is that first, we keep the arm out. First, we're going to internally rotate the arm, the humerus, to shorten that pec, and then we're going to bring it across the body, and we're just going to hold this position. Let me turn sideways. We're going to hold the position, say for 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you might get a little more range. So basically, how I think one of the best ways to use isometrics is first think about how you can shorten and contract the muscle the most. Then pause in that position and hold it. Okay, MAT will tell you maybe hold it for 6 seconds, say 6 times, to get the best neurological benefit from it. But that's not really a hard and fast rule. You can probably experiment with it, but I think it's a great tool to use to increase the communication of your muscles with your brain, with your central nervous system. And there's some other more traditional ways of doing isometrics. I think isometrics are great just for doing like little pauses in different ranges of motion. I'm not talking about rest pauses. Rest pauses are just another somewhat of advanced, say, bodybuilding technique that was popularized, many years ago. Rest pauses just mean that, for example, you do one set of bench pressing. Say you do like 12 reps to failure. You rack the weight. You rest. You pause. You rest 10 seconds. Then you do as many reps as you can till failure. Say you make 6 reps, then you pause, and then you do another, and then you go as many reps as you can, 3 reps until you just can't do it anymore. That would be rest pause training. What I mean about pauses is, for example, say you're doing dumbbell benching and you bring the weight down and then you just pause. At the bottom end, I would just hold it. You hold it, say, for 5 seconds, do another rep. You hold it for 5 seconds, do another rep. That's another great way of using isometrics, but is the opposite of what I'm talking about. So when you're bench pressing, just think the muscle is eccentrically low to the pecs. The muscle is being lengthened, so there is great proprioceptive, communication with the brain. The muscle is being elongated. There's elastic energy in the muscle. It wants to explode back up. It wants to come back up. But still, you still can use isometric that way. It's a great training tool. I just wouldn't, be careful not to go beyond your active range. Like, don't let the weight hang down there and just like pull on your ligaments and tendons. You want to pause in a position where you have control of the weight and where you feel like you're just making a great training effect. You're just making the movement harder. It's a great way just to increase the volume of a set, to increase your time under load. And really, it's a great thing to use in any position of weakness. For example, even your big movements like your squats, your big bench pressing. If you feel like there's a sticking point in your bench press, say maybe the sticking point is maybe mid-range, there's nothing wrong with doing some pauses at that sticking point with maybe a lighter weight and just hold it there for 5 seconds and then power through. Hold it there for 5 seconds. Any position of weakness is also a great way to use isometrics to make the body stronger, and it's also really safe. Isometrics, I find the contractile version, the first version I talked about, is extremely safe. Because just think, the body won't let you to contract into a position that's going to be painful. It just won't allow it. All those receptors, like those muscle spindles, all those, Golgi tendon, all these different muscle receptors will shut a muscle down. It will not let you hurt yourself. when you're playing sports, it's a different thing. You're running, you're moving, there's momentum, there's inertia, there's things going on where you can hurt yourself. But if you're just doing a smooth contraction, like a smooth isometric contraction, your brain will not let you go beyond a position that you control. And by pausing at these end ranges, you're really strengthening these positions of weakness. You're creating great communication between your brain and your muscles, and you're creating joint stability. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it can be a little bit confusing. If you have any questions, drop me an email. And once again, if you're watching this on YouTube, give me a thumbs up. And if you're watching this on Facebook, like it, share this post. And I always like to end these videos by saying that if you live in Westchester, New York, and you're looking for a great gym to work at, and you're looking for great personal trainers, you're looking for great classes, look me up. My gym is called 𝘾𝙊𝘾𝙃 Fitness. I'm 𝘾𝙊𝘾. I've been doing this for over 25 years. Well, take care, and hope everyone's having a great day.